Hey guys, welcome to the fourth edition of Amnic Cast. And then today we have Suyog Shetty, who is the CEO of Niveus. I will let him introduce himself, and then we will actually touch upon how enterprise migrates into cloud and what are the strategies that they adopt, how to optimize it, and then finally we'll touch upon some Gen AI as well. Suyog, over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Thanks, Sathya, for having me as part of this podcast. For everyone joining in, I'm Suyog. I'm the CEO and the co-founder at Niveus Solutions. We are a Google Premier Cloud Computing company. Where we work with customers in transforming their digital landscape, both from an engineering standpoint and driving value out of cloud. Right. So that's what Niveus does. We are also a tier two story. We're based out of a place called Udupi, Mangalore, which is south of Bangalore, right? That's where we are set up. And I think we've been transferring a lot of large enterprises, working out of this region. So that's a quick intro from our side.
Awesome, Suyog. I think let's start on that itself, right? So you have been transforming a lot of companies on their strategies to move to cloud, and then so why don't you talk about few of the interesting stuff that you're seeing currently?
Yeah, sure. So I think we got into the cloud and the partnership with Google Cloud about 5 years, four years back, right? And I think a lot has changed in the last 4 years in terms of how customers are looking at cloud and how they want to drive value out of it, right? So I think when we started off back in 2018 19 time frame, I think most of the cloud migration was with the intent of just moving to cloud, right? So if you look at the early adopters, right, a lot of them just wanted to move to cloud, just for the sake of it, right? Because I think there was a lot of push in terms of the adoption of cloud. Some people actually wanted to actually get rid of their data centers, right, and move from a capital intensive investment to more of a opex based thing. So that's how the initial set of trends, especially in the enterprise space, looked like, right? So that's one part of the segment. Right now, if you look at the whole adoption on how things have changed, right, in the last 5 years, people have realized that just doing that is not giving them the right ROI in terms of the whole adoption to cloud, right? You are not going to get the benefits of what cloud could actually drive value out of, and on the other side you are also going to incur excess cost on the cloud without true benefits of it, right? So in the last couple of years, the conversation has moved from migrations, where people are talking of workload migration, to how can you build or reimagine your customer landscape. How can you drive value through cloud, right? Through agility, through scale. How can you transform the customer experience, right? And building a new customer layer itself, right? Building and changing their API landscape, right? How do you monetize your APIs? So today I think there's little more clarity in terms of what to do with cloud, how to drive cloud, which has been the big change in terms of how cloud has been looked at, and how customers and enterprise wants to drive value out of cloud, right? But that's one part of the thing. But I think the other part of the segment we also work is in terms of the segment which is a digital native, right? Where the customers typically think cloud, and everything is designed for cloud, right? That's where they drive a lot of more value out of what cloud could offer. So that's how the journey has been, right? So we've started helping. So a lot of our initial work has been through migrations and other stuff. Today I think it's moved from migrations to building their end-to-end experience journey, right? Reimagining their API experience layer, right? And for the customers who have just taken and lifted and shifted their applications to cloud, we are also helping them optimize and kind of relook at what could be done better in terms of driving value out of those applications, right? So that's been the journey so far for us, Sathya, on the cloud.
Awesome. How do you, so you talked about lift and shift and how do you move into it, right? In terms of modernization, them using, like, are they moving into Kubernetes, like serverless? What kind of tech stack do you see in that?
Yeah. So I think for customers, there are I think specifically in the enterprise segment, right? I think there are two types of adoption which we are seeing, on the application side of it. One, I think there are applications which are just getting lifted and shifted to cloud because of the low ROI on those applications, right? And it makes sense just to move that. But there are also set of applications, or the peripheral set of applications which are being written on top of the core applications. There we see a lot of adoptions of containers, Kubernetes, serverless technologies being adopted, right? Because what is happening is, I think, these are legacy tech stack, right? And there are multiple technologies being involved, right? You may not be in a position to replace it overnight, right? And I think what we are seeing is these are getting modernized in stages, right? So a lot of the modernization what we are seeing is in all the customer experience peripheral applications,
Right.
right? So where customers are looking at the new experience layer, building a new API layer which could interact with their core systems, right? Now that's a layer which is working on technologies like Flutter, Node.js. They're using containers, Kubernetes, and that's where I think they're leveraging the true power of cloud, right? And these are customer-facing applications, right? And that's where they're able to churn out new customer experience layer at a much rapid pace. But I think the core systems still continue to be either running on their on-prem systems, or I think some of them are being just lifted and shifted and made to run on cloud, right? So what we see is once they start benefiting out of the new experience layer which is coming out, I think we do expect some of these core systems also to start getting modernized in the coming years, right? So that's the journey and the path most of the enterprise are taking in the coming years.
Nice. You touched upon a core topic of like on-prem to cloud, right? What are the strategies that you deploy, right? For example, let's say enterprise wants to move to cloud, right? Now, obviously, their monolith is sitting there somewhere in the on-prem, right? As you said, do you extend it on the cloud, or like what are the strategies that you adopt to tell customers that, hey, this is how you could actually move to cloud?
Yeah. So I think most of the larger enterprises have hundreds of applications which are built for various purposes. Now I think it's important to first assess, what is the value, the
Mm.
enterprises are deriving out of these applications. What are the future revenues and ROIs that could be derived, right? So that gives you a sense of what to do with that application, because once you get that sense, right, there are four things you can decide post that. Either you can decide to rebuild the application, because if it's a customer facing application, right, and competing with the newer age startups, right, it typically it is, we advise them to rebuild the whole thing, reimagine the whole experience itself, right? Now the second part of it is, if the application is really complex, right, and there are a lot of apprehensions, a lot of this one, then I think we also suggest them to just migrate it in the first phase, see how it runs on cloud, change the experience layer, and then take a staggered approach there. There are applications which you don't require anymore, right? It could be part of the newer application, so you can just let go them. You don't have to take the effort of even migrating to cloud in that sense. And in some cases, we also suggest them to kind of just remove that application and look at a SaaS based application which is available, right? So there are various strategies based on the type of applications. You can decide on what to do and how to migrate this. Now the most important thing which decides on how to migrate and what application to migrate is also dependent on the what business outcome you want to drive, right? I think I think if you're clear on your business drivers on right, and what outcome and what KPIs you want to drive from a key business drivers, some of these decisions becomes easier for you to take, because then you're not just moving it just for the heck of it, right? So there are clear directions on why one of the directions or one of the steps you're taking. So it's important that we strongly believe that wherever we see that these have been driven with clear business outcomes and business KPIs, the success of these whole migration or re-platform or re-engineering these applications, we see a much higher ROI and outcomes on those programs.
Can you give some examples of business outcomes, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the outcomes that you think that, hey, if you have these are your goals, then cloud is really amazing to go with, right? So how would you do that so that there is some tangible benefit in terms of when I should look at cloud as my uh, enabler for the business outcome?
Yeah, so I think it's a very interesting case study, which we did for one of the automobile OEMs in India, right? I think the customer was looking at changing the way in which they sell automobiles in India, right? And uh, uh, the whole experience layer needs to be rebuilt, right? But I think the core systems are still going to be changed, so they're still evaluating how this is going to move, and how we want to modernize it. I think we worked with them to we worked with them and Google to build a Google Cloud to build a new experience layer. Now what the customer was trying to do is, can they reimagine the whole buying experience of cars, right, which has never been done, like how you buy a regular e-commerce stuff, right? Because then you can digitize a lot of those processes, right from buying to support, to giving visibility in terms of the whole experience could be elevated, right? Now this was the first time it was done at this scale in India, and I think what happened at the end of this whole program, and this is, I think I could call up the customer, this is for Mahindra and Mahindra, for one of their iconic brands, Scorpio is what we did, right? And during the launch, I think during the first 10 seconds of the launch, where we changed the experience, I think they were able to sell about 25,000 cars, right? And within the first half an hour, it was about 1 lakh. So within the first 1 hour, there were about $2.3 billion worth of cars being sold on a
Wow.
digital platform, right? Which has happened probably in this scale, right? And that is the kind of impact we are looking at when adoption of cloud comes into play, right? There are true business outcomes, which and if you look at from a tech standpoint, right, I think if the technologies like containers, Kubernetes, scale, because I think what we were looking at is, uh, I think there was a discount of 1.5 lakhs for the first 25,000 cars. So it's a peak
Okay.
to handle, right, during that first. So
Uh,
within that first 10 seconds, you're selling about 25,000 cars, and everyone hitting at that point. And that's where the technologies like containers, Kubernetes, come, and the scalability of the cloud powers that this one, right? And then kind of to sustain that kind of a load. So that's the true power of cloud, what we are looking at, right? And I think and we do have many such stories, this one, and this is, we are very proud of this stories, because I think this was also called out in Google's this year's keynote as part of their next 23 event, which recently happened in US, right? So that's the power of cloud and the power of scalability and agility which comes with it.
No, it's amazing, right? You tie up the business outcome to the scalability. Now, the thing is, first 1 hour it's going to max, and then let's say
Yeah.
next 1 hour in the night, it could actually shrink, and
Yes.
again it
Yes.
can come back, right? Which is
Yes.
probably where the cloud plays, right? And
Yes.
now you could have done it on a on-prem, but then the number of servers are always going to be static, right? So
Yes. Yes.
I think that's it's amazing. So
Yeah.
now for people who have this mindset, right, coming from on-prem to the cloud, right, and that's the most tangible stuff, like, hey, you can go up and shrink, right,
Yeah.
versus the lift and shift, you don't get that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
why don't you talk about some of the do's and don'ts in terms of, hey, when you imagine a cloud, right, these are the outcomes, but this is how you actually do it, right? In
Yeah.
terms of these are the top 4 or 5 things that you should keep in mind And it's not about like I just take my code and then put into cloud and think that the cost is going to go down or I'm going to derive the value. Right?
Yeah. So I think the first don't is to by default take everything and put it on cloud, right? Because just because you want to move to cloud, right? And that's been the biggest problem in this whole adoption of cloud, right? So if you look at digital natives, and the reason why they are very successful in what they've built and they've leveraged cloud, because I think the whole thought process is around leveraging, and you have a cloud native mindset when you develop it, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you look at from an enterprise standpoint, I think it's slightly different, right? I think the companies have been operating on-prem infrastructures. It runs with the certain processes which we have worked with for them for a very long time, right? Now there's a sudden shift in terms of cloud, right? The everything is different now. If you have to leverage cloud, I think the primary bottleneck for that is the mindset which comes with that, right? Because until we may not be able to get the best out of cloud with an on-prem mindset, right? No, I think first to let go that is the bigger problem, because once you let go, then you start relooking at into what are the processes, how are you, because a lot of things which you would have not done in on-prem, would be kind of would you would be ending up and end up doing that on cloud, right? The overall, you can't have the same process and systems what you used for on-prem would work for this one, right? And that's important to this one. First is as I mentioned, don't move everything to cloud just because of this. And second one is unlearning your, this one, and relearning the, concepts of cloud and the mindset which is required. I think the mindset is the key. It's not the technology which is the
Yeah.
biggest blocker in some of these things. It's a mindset which, and the unlearning process is the third one. And the third important thing is, the reason why you want to do that, right? As I early mentioned, if you could tie up, all of these to clear KPIs, goals, which are linked to a business, I think you would have a better outcomes in some of these programs, right? That's the path we would typically recommend for any enterprises.
So I have had instances where some enterprises have said like, "Hey, lifted and shifted.
Yeah,
Let me redo my modernization whenever it is." Right. Then I have
yeah,
also spoken to some of the CIOs or CTOs who said like, "I'm moving into cloud and I'm going to modernize and move."
yeah,
Right. Now, lifting and shifting is a, in my opinion, it's like it's not a very very high risk stuff. Right. Okay.
yeah,
Cost might go up and all those things, but it will work. Right.
yeah.
Have you seen like how do you guys do when somebody says that, hey, by the way, modernize and move it to cloud? Right.
Yeah.
Have you come across that kind of a journey, and how successful is that part of in the overall
So
stuff?
I think both of them have has their own pros and cons, right? I think ideally you would want to modernize and move, right? But I think what the hindrance to that is the investment which comes, right? The apprehension, especially when you're doing it for the first time. How would it run? How would it perform? Right? And that's when I think we typically suggest you migrate, feel the whole concept of this one. But I think where we go wrong is in terms of not modernizing at a
Yeah,
post that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's where I think the challenge comes through. So it is okay to migrate and move things to cloud, and to see how it operates. But it's important that post that I think you modernize it to get the true benefits of clouds, right? And if you don't do that, that's when you start getting escalated in terms of your cost, right? And I think today what we see with most of the customers is I think high degree of excess spend. If you look at the reports which are coming out, close to 30% of the cloud spend is wastage, right? Right, it could be for various reasons, and one of the reasons is it not been architected well and not been designed well for this one. But ideally I think modernizing it and this one. So we have customers who have done both, right? customers who have modernized their application and then decided to move, or customers who have migrated and and then modernized. But one thing not to do is move to cloud with the intent to modernize it at a future date, and not to modernize, right? That's when I think you start seeing failures and high cost in your overall journey.
Awesome. Now that we touched upon cost, right? So why don't you give? I think you guys have been doing a lot of cost optimization, and it's one of the sought after stuff at this point in time, right? A lot of people have moved to cloud, and
Yeah,
suddenly
yeah.
they see that, hey, by the way, my cost has gone up, or in on-prem I was doing this, but in the cloud it's like, what are the top things that you see, and how do you guys actually go about optimizing on the Google Cloud?
Yeah. So I think if you look at the initial phase of cloud adoption, right, a lot of customers have migrated their workload to cloud, right, without clearly articulating why they would want to do that. Now, I think over a period of time, I think one of the big problems across the industry is the cost. Right, and not architecting the application for cloud is one of the reasons why the cost is a factor. But the other factors which are contributing to high cost is also you have not created a process for cloud. Right. The older processes which were there for provisioning, bringing in visibility, and this one, those don't operate on cloud. So we have moved our workloads to cloud, which are not architected for that. Then we have not created a process, both and governance to manage that. Right. That's where I think the cost escalations are happening. Now, as I mentioned, overall at an industry level, and this is about 30% of the overall cloud spend across, nearly close to about 30% is the excess cost which is being within us one. Now, what we do is a three-step approach in most cases. One, provide, I think the first thing is providing visibility, right? A lot of them have credits, there are departments, there are projects, there are team members. Now, it is about how are you going to provide, where am I spending my cost, right? So that's the first problem or the solution, or visibility you would want to understand, right? Because today I think the primary problem is the clarity in terms of where you're spending the money, right? That's not coming out clearly, right? So we have our own solutions to do that, and that gives you in terms of how much credits you have, how are you exhausting those credits, which department is using, which team is using, right? And if you're using solutions like BigQuery, we even tell you, in terms of which project, which query, which developer, what query is kind of consuming that, right? So to that level, we provide clarity in terms of. So once you do that, you know where you're spending it. Next is in terms of optimizing. Now, once you have the detail, you optimize it, and a lot of the optimization is about you would have provisioned excess hardware for an application. You're not using it, right? There are systems being provisioned which is not being used, right? So there are a lot of those cases which come. We also then look into the applications. Can that be modernized to to drive more value, right? And on this one, so that's the second step. So we then look at, once we have the data in place, then it's optimized. So if you're using something like a BigQuery, you can go into the query level to even go and optimize those queries, and then fine tune that. And the third part is creating a operating model, right? How does this operate? Once you identify, set up the optimize it. Third is setting up the governance and the process on how it should operate in the future, right? So how does a new request comes in, who should have an access, who could provision it, to what level it could be provisioned, right? Then you standardize that across the organization. So these are the three steps in which we try to optimize wherever we are managing cloud infrastructure for our customers today.
And how long does it typically take, right? When you talk about 20-30% is anecdotal, but from there to actually optimize the cloud, it's a journey, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
yeah.
so it's also like you need to get a buy-in, right? Now that
Yes,
you're moved
yes.
into cloud, how do you go about that? One is actually a journey of, let's say, 6 months, or I don't know how long it takes for you guys, but how do you work through that part, and how do you work with the stakeholders on getting that done?
Yeah. So you're specifically talking in terms of the cloud optimization,
Yeah,
Satya,
cloud
in terms of
optimization. Yeah.
so I think getting the buying is a tougher part of it, right? Because a lot of them would have provisioned something for some reasons.
Mhm.
No one knows why, and so that's a battle to be fought, and that's where I think what we do is in the first 2 to 3 weeks, I think we help customer to give them the visibility, because telling them this is your project, this is where you are, right?
Mhm.
The second part is the tougher part, right? How do you then get a buy-in, this one? So I think then we create our own analysis report in terms of right, this is the reason why this could be left out, because in the last 3 months this is how the usage has been, this is the maximum load, and this one, and then create a case for each of those cases. And that's a lengthier process, because once you get the buy-in, then you start seeing. So if you look at the first phase of identifying and optimizing this one, you typically are able to drive anywhere between 30 to 40% of cost reduction, quickly, because most of the cases there would be a lot of workloads which are sitting and not being used rightly, right? So that's the first part of it. The second, and post that, is when the modernization discussion starts for us, right? And that's a lengthier journey. But between, within 3 to 4 months, you should be typically able to drive between 30 to 40% of cost reduction with simple steps and simple process and governance being set up on those programs.
Awesome. Any examples in terms of hey, these are some of the use cases or real life examples in terms of how you have approached it? Like,
Yeah. So I think we have different types of and customers and in industry, right? So I think we do have one case study for an insurance organization, right? I think they had a very clear plan in terms of migrating to cloud, what to migrate, what to modernize, right? But at the end of this whole journey, while they were able to drive value out of the new experience layer, new applications being this one, they suddenly saw a surge in their cloud cost, right now, and which is typically the case, because a lot of there were lift and shift, and there were modernization of applications. Now I think this is where we came into play. We set up our own solutions to identify where the leaks were, where what are the infrastructure which was over provisioned or not used, redundant, right? And within 3.5 months, I think we were able to reduce close to about 30% of their overall cost, right? And that's the journey. It's a work in progress, this one. But I think for them, at least in the first 3 months, we've been able to reduce close to about 30% of their cost, right? Because while they were able to drive the value, I think cost is definitely, it has to be within a certain this one, right? And that's something which we were able to achieve with this customer.
awesome. I think any key takeaways that you can tell. Otherwise, we can go into the next section in terms of Gen AI, which is another hot topic at this point in time.
Yeah. So I think from a cost optimization standpoint, I think if I have to summarize, right, be clear, I think, on why you're moving to cloud, and if it's tied to outcomes, I think you will get the maximum benefit of that. Second one is the mindset, right? I think the on-prem and which was great during that time. I think cloud requires a change in the mindset. This one, so I think it's important to adopt that, right? Then, because once you realize that, then you start looking at what processes and systems you have to build to maximize those, this one. And third one is make sure that you have clear visibility on how you're spending on cloud, right? And that allows you to drive right ROI and within a defined cost.
Awesome. I think you touched upon all stuff in terms of visibility, optimization, and governance to make sure that you don't automatically leak stuff. Let's go into the next hot topic in terms of Gen AI, right? How do you see Gen AI evolving in the enterprise space? Like,
Yeah. So, Satya, I think there's a lot of discussion, and I think if you look at it in the last probably 6 to 8 months, right? You saw OpenAI, releasing their solution, Google releasing their own solutions. So there are a lot of anticipation and what do you say, a lot of talk about how this technology could change stuff, right? Because I think if you look at not only Gen AI but any technology, there's a lot of engineering, and this is happening on a lot of these platforms, right? So the complex part of engineering are getting solved now, right? Um, uh, but I think that and everyone wants to leverage it, right, to their, to either drive productivity on one side, or to drive new business outcomes, or business use cases on the other side of it, right, or to improve their overall. But I think where the where the struggle and clarity is not there is, if I'm a FSI customer or a retail customer, or this one, right? Where do I use this, and how do I clearly articulate my ROI, right? And that's where the gap is at this point, because the technology and the tech part of it is solved. So you have the right set of tools now available, right? And which are great, whether you're using the Google's solution or any other Gen AI solution available, right now. But what do you do with that? How do you drive clear value, is where all the experiments are happening. No one, everyone is in the process of identifying those, I think. And for next probably couple of months, people are going to go through this phase, right, and finally figure out, okay, this is where I'm going to use it, this is how I'm going to drive a clear value out of it, right? But I think, at least for the next couple of months, where we see is a lot of these experiments happening, in areas of optimization, in creating new business value, new customer experience, right? And we are involved in multiple cases across multiple industries today, in kind of one, sometimes articulating what could be done and doing experience jointly with the customer, right? And I'm sure at some point there would be more clarity in how these would drive business outcomes. So that's
Awesome.
that's the journey so far with Gen AI.
How do you see, if you have to put a mapping of some of the use cases that's evolving right now? You could have summarization, you could have Q&A of all their stuff, it could be co-pilots, right? Where do you see the maximum stuff in terms of
Yeah.
people?
So first is the productivity itself, right? I think the bigger and the faster shift is happening in terms of building the applications, right? Whether it's Copilot or technologies like Flutterflow, right? I think, while there is a lot of resistance in terms of adoption of these technologies for for valid reasons, right? That's where the first level of disruption is happening, right? How do you kind of accelerate your whole development testing process? I think we are doing our own trials and this one to see how much productivity improvement would happen. But that's one space, right? In terms of productivity improvement is where we see big shift happening. The second one is operations part of it, right? Your tech support, right? So that's the second part of it, where you could automate, and leverage some of these solutions. The third part of it is where, which is a tougher part, is to incorporate that in your actual business use cases itself, right? It could be probably helping a buyer to kind of decide on where I think we're working with banks and other things, where I think some of these tools are helping the buyers to kind of make right decisions, right? By articulating, creating those contents, and this one. So I think that's where I think the easier one is the productivity, second is the operational efficiency, and the third one is the business, right? So
and
that's how
and
we
are these,
yeah.
sorry, are these enterprises trying to build their own solution? Are you guys engaged in, hey, let's build a solution over Gen AI by actually calling some LLMs, or are these more like integrating other solutions which actually offers out of the box, right? How do you see it evolving here?
So I think most of the cases are building, customers are building their own solutions on top of the LLMs. So that's where we see this one. But I think over a period of time, there would be a lot of solutions which would be available where, some of these enterprise could just integrate and then leverage them, as part of the overall solutions. But at this point, I think a lot of our work is around building solutions directly for the customer, on top of the LLMs which are already available at this point.
Awesome. And we touched upon cost and touched upon LLM. How do you make sure you run LLMs in an optimal way? Do you have any suggestions or kind of like how do you guys run actually, right? Because
So
the GPUs
yeah.
are costlier, right?
Yeah, so I think today most of our experiments, happen on the Google Gen AI solutions, right? I think, and I today, while we believe that the costs are, not significantly higher at this point, because a lot of these are this one. So our focus is today on how to and what to build on top of that. I think we have not reached a stage that we would start looking at optimization. But I think when we looked at the cost and this one, I think we definitely see some of the Google solutions having, not a very significant cost in that sense, because a lot of these are already managed by
Got
Google
it.
in that sense. Yeah.
Have you also tried running LLMs on a GPU kind of stuff, or it's mostly like just all the APIs and
Mostly APIs at this point, right? So everything we have not taken and set up our own LLMs and doing it. So we have taken off the shelf, models available, and we're building solutions on top of that at this point.
awesome, man. Great. Any key takeaways for the audience in terms of what could they take away in terms of enterprise movement or Gen AI before we actually close the conversation?
Yeah, I think I already touched upon, I summarized my learnings and our experience on the cloud adoption and migration. On the Gen AI part, I think it's the same. At least some of the points are same. I think it's a great technology, right? I think it's a phase where we are in, where it could be the shift in terms of the way we would operate a lot of things in the future. One, I think we need to be open to that, right? Second, I think we need to be clear in terms of what we want to achieve with these. I think a lot of times we get excited with the tech itself, right, and forget what you want to do with it, right? So one, a clear mind, in terms of, I think change is going to come. I think it's in, be ready for that, and be part of the change itself. And second is, having clear goals in terms of what you want to achieve out of some of these tech, because it's a great tech to be, to be playing around with.
My last question: when do you think that the Gen AI solutions will be like you can touch and feel in enterprises and start working with some of these solutions?
So I think
Do you-
it's just around the corner. So we ourselves are rolling out few for our customers.
Nice,
So
nice,
I think it's just, it should happen anytime soon. If not us, there would be many more players similar to us who will be rolling it out. But I think a lot of them, either experiments or final production applications are getting built. So customers would start seeing the benefits of this, at some point, anytime soon.
Awesome, man! It's a pleasure having you here. Thanks a lot, Suyog, for taking time and having been.
All right. Thanks, Satya, for for having me as part of this one. It was a great discussion, and a good luck, for your rest of the podcast as well. Thank you.
Same, same. Thank you. Bye, guys.